The Cine Men are back with their 32nd and a half episode.
And a half.
Well, we did that little joint right when all the Corona business kicked off. That was like a half an episode, if you want to.
Well, if we're considering that half an episode, then what do we count all the minisodes with the Oscars? Do those just not exist?
They only exist in the month of February.
And after that, poof.
Yes,
they Kaiser Sose that bitch.
Yeah, it's there. They are. You have to open them like Mission Impossible joints. They self-destruct right after the Best Picture is given at the Oscars, and you can't find those episodes anymore.
Oof.
Yeah, and then we act like they've never happened.
Yeah, well, that's basically what happens to cinema once award season's over. It's like we're done with those movies. What's next?
You just got like 2-3 months of buildup of every award show ever, and then the Oscars happens, and they're like, "Fuck movies,"
pretty much.
And then
we just Josiah Bartlett the whole thing and go, "What's next?" And keep moving.
Pretty much. And then September, October, and they're like, "Ooh, movies." Yeah, they're year round. Get dicks.
They really are. They really are. People tend to forget that, and even with all the COVID business, there's still plenty of films coming out. And if there weren't, you and I would have nothing to talk about.
Yeah, that's the hell we would. We'd be talking about older movies we hadn't seen yet.
Yeah. I'm really excited for No Time to Die. And however that gets released, that's the one. We talked about that with Noel, I think.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the year. March. God, beginning of the year. How long ago was March? What day is this? Yeah, you don't know. That's the problem.
My mind was going elsewhere. That's what I was going to say. Yes, in researching today's episode, I got super ridiculously excited again for No Time to Die. Whenever that comes out, if any foundations are left standing by the end of the year,
yeah,
then I'll be, or maybe next year, depending on how COVID is working, then I'll be happy to see that movie. Did they push that back to next year or the end of this year?
November.
When Bond is supposed to come out.
You know, you say that, and I haven't done any research to find out when Bond has been coming out throughout its...
I know Casino Royale was November.
Are we like 26, 27 in at this point? No.
Number of movies?
20 was Die Another Day.
Yes, so you're rocking about 24, 25 now?
This would be the 25th, because this would be the fifth outing.
Yes.
Okay, so 25. The ones with Craig, I think you're right, have been primarily November. I forget about Casino Royale. I saw
Casino Royale is November.
It was?
Yes. Quantum of Solace is also November.
Okay. And Spectre was definitely November. I covered that for Culture.
There you go.
Early days of starting to write.
Back in the 2015s. Yeah, that was also November. So it looks like at least the Craig era Bonds have been coming out fairly steadily in November.
Yeah. And it works for them. They are great holiday escapism for the family.
You know what? Yeah, it kind of is like your holiday blockbuster that doesn't really fuck with all the summer stuff. Yeah. They're like one of the treats on the back end that you can still get a little blow them up towards the end of the year.
It's sort of, I think, why a film like Knives Out worked so well in November, where it would have been buried in the summer, because it has this wonderful cast, and it's playful, but it's a little dangerous, but it's also pseudo-family friendly. It was PG-13. It's PG.
GoldenEye, November. So it looks like they have, and I looked up Goldfinger is early December. So, yeah, it looks like late year-ish is when Bond tends to run. So hopefully we get to see No Time to Die and see Old Man Craig in his final outing.
Craig?
See how tired and weary he is in this movie, because that's what I expect.
We kick both our asses with literally no problem.
Yes. I mean, that's because we're also Old Man Douglas and Old Man Daryl. And if we haven't introduced ourselves by this point in the episode, it's Douglas and Daryl.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
How you doing?
Wow, I have no idea how long we've been recording.
My name is Douglas Davidson.
And I'm Seed. No,
never said quite like that.
All over your office.
So usually we kick this bad boy off by getting into stuff we've watched. Do you want to roll into that, sir?
Sure, yeah. I've seen quite a few things lately. I know that with COVID going on, it's certainly a feeling of there's nothing to see. I have had no slowdown in things releasing because for a lot of films that would normally just go to the theaters, there's also been over the last year or two a lot of films that are doing theatrical, VOD, and digital all on the same day. So there are still films that were already slated to come out for those that were past post production when all of this went down. So I've got four films to discuss, at least just to recommend people check out. If you're looking for something that is sort of light and a lot of fun to watch, or at least I found it to be a lot of fun to watch, it's a film that was originally to be released on Paramount, got shifted over to Netflix, The Lovebirds.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a Michael Showalter directed film. For those of you that are less familiar with him, he is a actor, writer, director. He's part of the State crew. So your Wet Hot American Summer, those folks, right? Or The State, if you ever watched it. But Michael Showalter had worked with Kumail Nanjiani on The Big Sick, because Kumail not only co-wrote that, I believe, with his wife, Emily V. Jordan, but Michael, and starred in it, but Michael directed that film, which went on to get, I forget if it was just the nomination. I think it was just the nomination for the screenplay for The Big Sick, which if you haven't seen that, do highly recommend. It's inspired by the very true story of Kumail's relationship with his now wife, Emily, and how she almost died.
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't seen it, do recommend that. And I think that's streaming in a few places. But The Lovebirds, it's a not mistaken identity type of story, but it's about a couple who is very much fighting. They are in the middle of breaking up when they get carjacked by a cop who then goes and kills someone. And they're afraid that they're going to get blamed for the murder when some people find them next to the dead body. So they run off and decide to solve it for themselves. Hijinks ensue, as you can expect. And what I found most interesting, I forget, did you, Daryl, see Queen and Slim?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that premise is sort of what they use here, but for comedy.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that people of color, if they're found over a dead body, they're just going to be immediately, murdered.
Yeah.
And it got dark really quick, considering what's been going on of late. I didn't mean for it to go in that direction, but the film literally has a sequence where they make jokes about this. And so maybe don't watch The Lovebirds right now. Maybe that would be a bad thing to watch right now. And entertainment is something that is hard to come by right now to take your mind off of what's going on if you have that privilege to be able to separate yourself from this stuff. But The Lovebirds is fun. If you think you're in a mindset to enjoy something like that, go for it. It's not the best Netflix film that they've ever released. I'm not sure what that film would be.
You know what? I was trying to think about that the other day, and I was like, what is the best original Netflix film? And out of all the ones I've seen, I was like, well, it's probably not that. Well, probably not that. Probably not that. Probably not that. That is a case for another day, sir. I might have to get on the case.
Kodachrome is probably up there as one of my favorites. I don't think enough people saw that one. Kodachrome. It came out in, I want to say, 2018.
Maybe Beast of
It's
No Nation.
Jason Sudeikis, Ed Harris, Elizabeth Olsen, and that one was inspired by a newspaper article about how a bunch of people were descending upon a what's the right word? It's a photo developer, because they were the last ones that had the chemical that was no longer being used to develop film. And so a bunch of people were descending upon it, and they used that as a sort of road trip family drama story. And it's I think a feature debut from that particular director, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Well, while you were talking, I was doing a little bit of research in here.
As you do.
I feel like I've seen part of Kodachrome because that sounds familiar. I think they it was part of a watch party that was watching it, but for some reason I couldn't make it all the way through. The quick Google for Netflix originals, and obviously, and I don't know why this didn't stand out to us in the first place. It's Bright. It's got to be Bright, right?
I've never finished it.
It's not Bright. If I had to do a quick look, it's probably Dolomite is my name for me.
Oh, I could totally see that. Just not just for you, because you were raving about that film last year, but that is a phenomenal film.
That being said, I might have to dedicate a little bit of time to this somewhere, maybe next year, going through all these Netflix originals to see if I can't make myself a little listless. Anyways, what's the second thing you've watched, sir?
Well, something on a lighter note is a film called Debt Collectors.
Are you sure it's on a lighter note there, sir?
Is my what?
Are you sure it's on a lighter note?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, this one, because the title makes it sound like, you owe money, they're coming for you. Yeah, this isn't like student loan type of debts. This is actually a sequel. It's from a film called The Debt Collector. It's directed by Jesse V. Johnson, co-written by a guy that he frequently works with, Stu Smalls. They did Triple Threat, they did Avengement, and I forget what else they did. But this film is dumb, stupid fun.
Mm.
It really, truly is. It stars Scott Adkins and Louis. I don't know if it's Louis or Louis Mandylor. From the writing, I don't want to presume. But the premise is that a guy named French and a guy named Sue are former partners from the first film, and they come back together to do a couple of debt collections for their boss, Tommy. They have to drive to Vegas to talk to one person. They have to do 2 jobs in LA. And what they don't realize is that some people are on their butts because they were involved in the murder of a crime boss's brother. Well, crime boss's brother was setting them up to take the fall for a different murder. So there you go. So watch Debt Collectors.
Okay, that's an interesting premise.
Yeah, the first one is a lot of fun. It starts off more as an action buddy comedy and then turns into a bit of a drama. Debt Collectors does the same thing. If you liked films like Triple Threat, you'll enjoy this. And Scott Adkins was in that as well.
Yeah.
Now, the next 2 films to recommend. By the way, Lovebirds is streaming, as you know, if you're familiar with Netflix. Debt Collectors is on VOD and I believe digital. The next 2 films are both on VOD. They both are a lot of fun, but deal with, I would say, incredibly heady topics. The first one is Judy and Punch, which is a first-time debut by Mariah Folks, if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sure I'm butchering it, and I apologize. Called Judy and Punch. It is a film from Australia that debuted in 2019 at Sundance, and then got a late 2019 release overseas before now in the States being released. It's, if you're familiar with the puppeteer show Punch and Judy, this is inspired by that story and is sort of a meta story where at the beginning of the film, when you meet the puppeteers, Punch and Judy, they put on the Punch and Judy show. And the story that you watch is sort of the story that unfolds in the real world as well. And it is a bit of a tragedy. The film itself is a female revenge story. And basically, men suck. Patriarchy sucks. And the use of fear to control people is absurd and ridiculous. But if you're familiar with Tom Stoppard, he's a playwright who also has done in cinema Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead and Shakespeare in Love.
I still have not seen Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, and people
we will fix that.
I was actually looking at it earlier this week, like I should sit down and watch this, and I was like, time.
It is one of my favorites. It is literally one of my favorites.
Okay.
And anywho, It's that sort of satirical, irreverent appreciation for the writing and the period of literature that things come from, the source material, but also very Burton-esque, from the music to the cinematography, using the period to explore something sort of dark and macabre. The fact that, hey, I don't understand a thing, therefore it must be a witch and we must destroy it. And it's sort of interesting in that regard. And in a more modern story that I can't recommend enough is the follow-up by Josephine Decker. She is not writing this one. It is actually written by, and I want to make sure I get this right, Sarah Gubens, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is adapting the script from a book by Susan Scarf Morell, Shirley, being released by Neon. Holy shit.
I'm all about some Neon.
If you enjoyed The Invisible Man, and if you came out of that film going, there is no way Elizabeth Moss could be more impressive, just wait till you watch Shirley.
Okay.
The whole film is deceptively cutting. It is absolutely fucked up and amazing, and it is decadent and delicious and hypnotic, and it'll fuck you up.
Sold.
Yeah. And when I say that, it's not like it's gonna, you know, it's not gonna psychologically mess with your head, but it is incredibly clever in the way that it explores social roles, masculinity, femininity, the relationship between art and academia. I was watching it and I couldn't. I was just hooked. I was mesmerized. It is amazing. So, without giving too much away, it is based on Shirley Jackson, the writer who did The Lottery, the short story, as well as the book, The Haunting of Hill House.
Yep.
If I've got that right, Netflix TV show, movie with Vincent Price, movie from the late 90s, early 2000s?
We covered that on Refried Scenes. We don't need to cover it anymore.
There you go. So make sure to go listen to that episode. But it's based on the relationship between Shirley Jackson and her husband, Stanley Hyman, but it's entirely fictionalized in terms of the story itself in the film. They use that period, they use those people, but they use sort of the public version of Shirley Jackson to bring in another couple who comes to live with them as Shirley is writing another story about a girl who disappeared. And they use it to explore all of those things that are brought up. It is fantastic. I cannot recommend it enough. And I honestly don't know which film I would nominate Elizabeth Moss for, Invisible Man or Shirley, but if I had to choose it, it would be Shirley.
Shout out to Michael Stuhlbarg. Let us not forget that he's also in this film.
Oh my God, he is amazing. We've seen him play assholes before, and we've seen him play like the world's favorite father before. Imagine putting those together as this sort of sexist, loving, misogynistic, horrible, amazing partner.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I fucks heavy with Stuhlbarg. I like that guy.
Oh yeah, he was always one of those dudes that was like, I know him. And then after, I still haven't seen A Serious Man. It's literally on my queue to watch. But after Call Me By Your Name, I was like, that dude. Now I know who he is. He was great in Arrival. Amazing in Call Me By Your Name.
People forget he's also in Doctor Strange.
Yes, he is. Dr. Nicodemus West?
Yeah, that's him.
Which, speaking of Doctor Strange, Scott Adkins, who is one of the leads in Debt Collectors, is also in Doctor Strange. I forget if he gets murdered by Doctor Strange's cape, or if he's the one that gets thrown into like the jungle before the scene.
He's the one who gets thrown in, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Strange is one of my more least watched movies, but yeah, pretty sure he's the one that just gets tossed.
Do we need to bargain? Do we need to bargain to get it higher on your list?
Not at all. Is that it?
That's it for me. What you got?
A movie that I watched a while back, but I don't think I ever talked about on this show, which I finally might have a little bit of time to sit down and revisit or move on to the next one, is the Samurai trilogy by Hiroshi Inakagi. There we go. I had to take me a little bit to get that one out. So it's a trilogy of samurai films from the 50s, and each came out in succession. I think it's 54, 55, and 56. I watched the first one not so long ago, starring our boy, of course. If you got a samurai joint for the 50s, of course it's Toshiro Mifune up in there. And this whole trilogy is just following this fictionalized-ish version of an actual Japanese swordsman, Miyamoto Musashi, which is the name of the first movie. Samurai 1, Musashi Miyamoto. How he is the slow transition from being a soldier on a losing side of a war to wanting to be a swordsman with absolutely no training, no discipline, no none of that. It's one of those, he's got the inherent talent to be, but those skills need to be honed. So while he has no skills in being a swords fighter, he can still hold his own if need be, you know? And what a fucking dick he is in the first movie. He's infantile almost in a sense, and just wanting to be this thing. He's incredibly selfish at times, but he's also incredibly caring and endearing. He saves a widowed mother and her daughter from being attacked by bandits. And but he also terrorizes his own fucking town as well. So like they have to have this, like the whole back half of this movie is just like a manhunt to find this dude who's just been terrorizing villages all over the place, while also kind of helping people at the same time. Incredibly good. It won what we now know as his best foreign language film. That's what the first movie won back in 1955. And you know, they kind of set you up, and he got a little bit of a love story in there as well. A very well crafted and well weaved in love story. Like for me, there's the love story range. On the extreme end is In a Mood for Love. Like for me, that might be one of the best. And then on the other end, you have Attack of the Clones. So it is much closer to In the Mood for Love. Like this is a naturally, it's not forced. It slow builds. It just kind of makes sense. You're like, oh, I kind of do want to see these. You root for them. Unlike Attack of the Clones, where you're like, oh yeah, you know, they kind of got to get together, so you just kind of fucking force it in there a little bit.
I hate sand. It's so coarse.
Like, stop looking at me like that, Anakin, but less bone later. I plan on, if I
that
get
line
chance,
doesn't work for you.
That line doesn't work. The let's bone part did. That's in the unrated cut.
Have they released that yet? Release the unrated cut.
Release the Clones cut. I plan on watching the second one of these maybe later on today, so I might talk about that on the next episode, and then I might talk about the third one, so you get a whole nice little progression. But this first one is very well shot, great character development. The action scenes, so this is the 50s. It's not like if it was made today, it would just be, you know, you're talking about a swordsman, so it's just going to be blood, guts, and gore all over the place, right? In the hands of a average to less competent filmmaker. But this was done before all of that, really. That wasn't quite the thing back in the 50s. So this is artfully done violence, if you want to say that. The sword fights showed the more brutal nature. Like the sword fights weren't like dancing. They weren't highly choreographed numbers. It was just, if you can get a shot in somewhere, get it, and half the time you're just spent on the back foot in the defensive and deflecting and swinging wildly. That's kind of what this is. So it's a little bit more realistic in nature. Go ahead. It's on the Criterion streaming service. If you have that, go ahead and check it out, man. Samurai 1, Musashi Miyamoto. Check it out.
I was actually going to ask about that because by the time that this releases, HBO Max is out.
Yeah.
And I was curious. I was going to ask you about that, which I would think if you had HBO Max and the Criterion channel, you would not really want for anything in this world if you're a cinephile.
Yes.
Because all the stuff that's on the TCM portion, like there's Criterion releases that you can now watch through HBO Max that as the Criterion app is cycling through stuff, it would you'd get the full picture.
Yeah, I took 30, 40 minutes the other day and set up my watch list for HBO Max. And at the end of it, I'm like, what am I thinking? There's no way I'm gonna watch all this shit. But still, it's a fairly varied list of things on there. So look forward to digging into some of that stuff. Once the big sci-fi deal is all said and done, and as the year kind of winds down, then yeah, I'm gonna just kind of dig into what I want. It doesn't feel like homework anymore.
Yeah, right on. Have you watched anything else beyond the first part of the Samurai trilogy?
Yes, but that is all reserved for the sci-fi business.
Oh, come on, give us a tease.
I fucking watched. Oh, you know what? I'll tell you this. I watched Andromeda Strain, and I was like, "Hey, that's not making it on the list." Very realistic.
A big old nope, huh?
A big old nope. Let me pull it up. It's from the 70s, I do believe.
Michael Crichton, correct?
Yes, and Michael Crichton adaptation, much like your Jurassic Parks and your Lost Worlds and all that kind of bit of business.
And your ER.
The show ER?
Yeah.
With Michael Crichton?
Yep.
Yeah, you learn something new every day. Yeah.
It's a good day. Yay!
1971, directed by Robert Wise. It's kind of weird to watch it in this time frame where you have some kind of organism is just wiping people out in a small town, and they're trying to figure out. They're looking at it
from bullshit. That would never happen.
They're looking at it from a very scientific point of view, which is cool, which rocks. Science is dope as fuck, but science isn't always good entertainment. Yeah. And they approach it in a very clinical, sciencey way, which, while it makes complete sense, it is quite dry. And it's a lot of process involved in going through the process and seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work. So yeah, good science, not great entertainment though. So fortunately, and I'd never seen it before, but I knew of it. I knew it. It's kind of a sci-fi thriller bit of business. So I was like, all right, let's check this out and see if it deserves to go on the list. Ain't gonna quite cut it though. Ain't gonna quite cut it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, now we know something that okay, so that takes out one. Now we just have a few more that we need to, can we figure it out what is on this list? I'm going to guess Little Shop of Horrors. I'm going to guess Repo the Genetic Opera. On it. High on the list.
You know what? I'm glad you said that, because that actually reminds me. I'm going to go back and rewatch Repo Man, the much better version. And see if
that's the one with Emilio Estevez?
No. What?
Oh, I thought you were talking about Repo Man.
No, yeah.
Repo Man.
Jude Law's Repo Men. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. That's the one, interestingly enough, that film and the Genetic Opera were involved in a lawsuit because the one you're talking about that you want to rewatch, when you do think about the Genetic Opera, you will see the similarities between the two of them.
Oh, I mean, I noticed that when I was watching the Genetic Opera.
Yeah, the folks behind the Genetic Opera, they released theirs first.
That doesn't surprise me one bit. Yeah, it might be somewhere in the very, very, very high 90s. It won't be high up on that. Awesome. No, definitely not. Yeah,
people in Paprika, show your love for the Genetic Opera.
All 13 of you.
Did you know that Zydrate comes in a little black box?
Jesus Christ. I watched a couple of things, none of which immediately stand out to my mind. That's all for the sci-fi stuff.
All right. Cool. All right, then.
Oh, by the way, have you seen Melancholia?
I can't remember if I finished it or not.
Because
it was a hard watch.
It's listed as a sci-fi joint.
It is.
And I was like, all right, well, let me do a little bit of research. And then kind of looking into the synopsis, I'm like, this is some thin-ass sci-fi veneer over what looks like to be more of just a drama.
It is a drama, but it is science fiction in the sense that the Earth is about to be destroyed. I forget if this is the one where a planet is about to slap right into us.
Yeah, that's what it is. And that's kind of, it seems like the backdrop for the actual drama. So I don't know if that's science fiction-y enough to meet my qualification.
Well, I mean, a lot of science fiction, it really, well, it goes to your qualifications in terms of what you're defining as science fiction. Because is it something like RoboCop where a guy gets brought back to life via technology sci-fi? Or is it more of 10,000 Leagues Under the Sea where at the time it was written and you've got people going deep under the water in a submarine? Is that science fiction? Now, if you're considering that as science fiction where it is happening within a space that didn't exist at the time of it being created, then Melancholia might blend in there because it's using a otherworldly event, if you will, to tell its story.
Right on.
So it might fall within those parameters, but as you just pointed out, it depends on what your qualifications for a science fiction film are.
Yeah.
But it's depressing as hell.
All right.
And it's one that I can't remember if I've seen all of it, but I know enough of the story, or I can remember enough images from watching it that it feels like I've seen it all. I can't remember. But it is a hard watch. But what's her name?
Dunst.
Yes, Kristen Dunst is great in it.
Cool.
She's great in it. Yeah.
All right, we ready to roll into our top threes there, sir?
I think so. And you say top three, man, this was a hard one. Our lead-in topic for the day is car chases. And in doing research on this, you talk about qualifications. How do we decide what a car chase is?
Mm-hmm.
In doing some research, I found some shenanigans with other people's lists where they put in stuff like Cannonball Run and Cannonball Run 2. Those are not car chases. Those are races. Yeah. That's what that is.
Yeah.
The car chasing behind another car? Yes. But it's not a car chase. A car chase is something like the movie The Chase with Christy Swanson and Charlie Sheen, where a guy either commits a crime or thinks that he's being committed of a crime, and he kidnaps someone, and the whole movie is them in the car being chased by the cops.
Right on.
That's a chase movie. It's Ant-Man and the Wasp, where the bad guys are chasing after the good guys, trying to get a thing while they're chasing after somebody else who has the thing.
And what a dirty undercarriage those cars have.
Seriously dirty. But really clever in terms of a car chase. It's Death Proof, where the girls are trying to run Kurt Russell off the road and vice versa. That's a fucking car chase. So Dark Knight, Matrix Reloaded, those have car chases.
Mm-hmm.
But Cannonball Run, yeah, get off me with that mess. No.
That ain't it, son.
That is not. So trying to nail these down was really hard. Although it did also remind me, I was talking with Crystal, we were doing some research, and she goes, Toy Story. I was like, where in Toy Story is there a car chase?
Yeah,
that's a car chase. Going after the moving truck.
Yeah.
So, okay.
It's not your most high-speed car chase, but for them, the stakes are high.
The batteries are running out.
Yep.
So what is your first of your three?
The first one that I have on my list is The Bourne Identity.
Ooh.
That one came to mind fairly early on when this concept was agreed upon. I went back and I rewatched it again last night, and I was like, oh my God, Matt Damon looks so young here. Yeah.
That is what happens when you look backwards in time.
Oh, okay.
That is how that looks. Whereas right now, we look old.
And
it ages me.
Years from now, when I look back on this, I'll be like, yep, I was still looking old back then. So one of the good things about this one in particular, sometimes a car chase just kind of comes out of nowhere. Like, it might just be another part tacked on to what's already some action-y shit. This one is not. And one of the good things about it is there's tension and build-up to the car chase. And cleverly edited as well, where you see, all right, you have one police car he notices like in the side of the rear view mirror, and then they see another one kind of creeping around the corner, and they haven't quite been recognized yet, and that music's building up a little bit, and you see all the things processing in Matt Damon's head, and he starts asking those questions. have you treated this car well? The tires felt a little splashy on the right side, and you're like, oh, it's about to be on. And normal car chases, they just take off and go. Nope, this starts in reverse. He starts in reverse, backs out of the spot, turns around, and keeps going. And you're like, here we go. And it is a great car chase through the streets, sidewalks, stairs, a lot of 180 sharp turns all throughout this bit of business. I think one of the elements of a great car chase is editing. A lot of it lies in the editing, and this is one well-edited car chase scene. A lot of reaction shots, cuts between the cool and supremely confident, I'm in control of this vehicle born. What is her name? The lady that he's rolling with, where she has no idea what's going on. And
oh shoot, I can't think of her name. She's fantastic though. Run Lola Run is one of my favorites. Yeah.
Marie, that's her name in the movie. Marie. Cuts to her just flipping out all over the place because this is not her world. And of course, the incompetent police who can't quite keep up. It's a good car chase that when it was over, when I saw it for the first time, I was like, that might be one for the books.
Right on. I wanted to like those movies. I really, really did. But before I had seen it, I'd actually read a bunch of Robert Ludlum.
Mm-hmm.
And he has written some phenomenal books, some that are straight up spy stuff and some wonderful comedy stuff. And the Bourne film series, Matt Damon was phenomenal in that. And one of the things I loved about it is that was, I think, the first film that showed that he could really do action and do it believably.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, in terms of an adaptation, it decided to go in a very different route from the books. In fact, the 3 films make up most of the story of the first book,
mm-hmm.
except She Lives.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. Like, they murder her in the second one, the start of it.
Yeah,
use that as a catalyst. Minutes. And I'm like, that's some bullshit. They get married.
Nice.
Yeah, the books are fantastic if you've never read them. If you're looking for something to read, can't recommend them enough. But that as a car chase, that is it. I'm now real curious about where you're going to go from here, because that's a pretty solid car chase.
You damn right it is. And what's your first one, sir?
My first one, I coming up with this list was so hard, because first it's that delineation of car chase versus race, and trying to figure out, because like there's an amazing one police story at the start of it, and the Raid 2 is phenomenal. And how do you decide? And I went, all right, you mentioned editing. Editing is a huge part of keeping that momentum and keeping that tension running high. I went with the opening sequence of Baby Driver.
Yeah, I figured you would.
It's a great movie.
I was like, all right, well, Doug's going to take Baby Driver. So,
yeah, well, I've probably got at least another one on this list that is not going to be a surprise at all for anybody. But with Baby Driver in that opening sequence, it not only sets the tone in terms of storytelling for Baby Driver moving forward, but it is also sets the tone for how the story is going to be told, the characters themselves, how they function, their needs, their motivations. An action sequence, as we've discussed, will always convey some form of information. You talked about that first samurai film and how the way it would be shot now, having a sword fight versus the way it was shot then. A fight sequence, a car chase, any part of the story should always help move things forward. And that opening sequence from Edgar Wright, it conveys so much information packed in that 6-minute sequence.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't get, I think, any better than that opening sequence, which is unfortunate because the movie itself is so solid. But there is no car chase action sequence that, to me, gets any better in the film than that moment.
Yeah, and that's my issue with that film. You started with, you put your best foot forward, and everything after that was kind of lackluster to me.
Yeah, well, to a degree, I agree with you. The first time watching it, I left the theater going, I really don't know how I feel about this film. And then in talking about it with people, I started getting that itch of wanting to revisit it. And in doing so, I just found more things to love and appreciate about the film. That Edgar Wright is on full display here in terms of his thought and his planning. And this film took, I think, over 10 years to develop. You can see the precision at work here. So that's why I had to put the opening sequence of Baby Driver down. What is your second film?
All right. My second film is... I'm trying to figure out. My second film is Quantum of Solace.
I don't know what my... Hello, Daryl. Are you with us here on episode?
Yeah, Quantum of Solace is what I'm going to go with. You're talking about one of the great things about the Bourne Identity's car chase is all the things that lead up to it before it gets popping, and you're like, here we go. You don't get that in Quantum of Solace. That's how the movie starts. It starts wild with a car chase. Like, a lot of people deride that movie as the weakest of the Daniel Craig franchise, and they're right, but also you got to kind of look at the time frame that it was made. It made during a writer's strike. You didn't have all your best resources available to you. I also stand by the fact that years down the road, people will look at Quantum of Solace the way we look at Honor and Majesty Secret Service now. And people, for the longest time, were like, that one off with that one guy whose name we can't remember. It's not that great. Honor and Majesty Service is a fucking phenomenal movie. It's not just a great Bond movie. It is a great movie. And I think people are going to go back and look at Quantum of Solace. And it is Daniel Craig at his most cold, I think, and his most ruthless. And it stands
very
up.
Personal.
Very
personal.
Yeah, there's a love there between Bond and M there. And you're like, you want to try to take out my boss? What? Nah, you got to go. Going very rogue. Anyways, and it opens up with, for the first time ever in a Bond franchise, the immediate events from the preceding film, which you don't really understand that until at the end of this phenomenal car chase sequence. Then he pops the trunk and you find out there's been a body in this trunk the whole time throughout
Mr. White.
Car chase. Yeah, Mr. White. And in the first spoken words of the film, Time to Get Out. It is it's wonderful. You can see technical precision at work here from the filmmaking standpoint, but I mean from Bond's, his thought process of, let me slow down, let me get behind this guy, let me use this obstacle to get around this to free me up to get to my gun, take this guy out. A couple times he almost gets taken out, and he stays very, very cool, calm, and collected throughout all this because this is his job. This is what he does. This is his world. And it's I've often said that the opening of Quantum of Solace might be one of the best scenes in a James Bond film.
I agree with you that is often considered one of the worst of the Craigs, and that time will determine how society looks at it. I came out of Spectre blown away by how we see Bond now sort of comfortable in his role. He's no longer cold and he's no longer as cold and just sort of machine kill everything. They finally got him to a place where he could be sort of Roger Moore-esque without it
being
hurting anything.
Goofy.
Yeah, exactly. Like the opening sequence, which is great. And he falls from the building onto the couch and he's like, dusts himself off, keeps moving.
Yeah.
They sort of found their stride with Spectre, but in going back and rewatching the films, you start to realize that Spectre had so much fan service that it's fairly hollow, and there's a lot of things that don't make sense.
Oh God, yeah. The only compliment I have for that movie is that it's got a pretty decent car chase sequence in it.
Batista's great. Mm-hmm. He doesn't really say anything, but he's great, and it sets up some stuff and ties back to things like the Return of Mr. White that are really interesting. But while it's sort of fun in that regard, it's one of these. There's few films that I'd like to go back and sort of redo my review of it, and that is one of them, because I think I was too caught up in how much it serviced me as a fan that it failed to service the story at the same time. And Quantum of Solace does a great job in serving the story as well. And you talk about the relationship between M and Bond, and you and I can just do this so much, so often, but we haven't seen something like that. They do it again in Skyfall, but they play that really well with Judi Dench, which they'd done in The World
Is Not Enough.
Is Not Enough. Thank you. With Brosnan, who was also really good in it, and that relationship was really good. And I love how they did Dench and Craig together, developing that relationship as well. And it all begins with Quantum. So yeah, good solid choice there.
Good car chase. And what's your next one, sir?
My next one probably isn't too much of a surprise. I have talked about this film at various opportunities. Again, looking at a variety of car chase sequences and how it serves the story, I felt like I had no choice but to go with the Justin Lin 2011 film, Fast Five. That is probably my favorite of the Fast and Furious films. It is a heist film. I believe it was on my list when we covered heist films. But the fact that it's them getting away from the crooked I forget if he's a businessman or if he's also in the government, but it's down in Brazil, and they are driving away from the cops, dragging the vault behind them that they're using as a ball and chain to take out the other cops. And it in terms of the editing, in terms of the storytelling, they're able to convey a whole lot, keeping the energy up, keeping the tension up, and using that ball and chain to great effect comedically. So it's not so much the tension of the sequence. You know they're going to get away. You know that they're all going to be fine. We haven't lost Paul Walker at this point, so there was none of the sorrow built into the story that would come later and before it sort of goes off the rails with Fate of the Furious. Yeah, it went off the rails.
Before it goes off the rails, that movie, I've seen that sequence you're talking about, and I was like, this shit is absolutely absurd.
Yes, it is absurd, but pseudo-plausible in the realm of we're going to bend reality before they break it with, I'm going to use a car to make sure another car doesn't go fly off a road that happens in Furious 6. When Dom, they're being chased by the tank, I think, and Letty's car is going to go off the road, so Dom uses his car to knock it back on the road when he no. Like they haven't even gotten into the ridiculousness shit yet, but this might be the start of it. But it's still plausible within the world we've seen so far, and it's some bullshit, but it is so much fun. Which is what Fast Five is. It is pure joy. I mean, that's when we introduced The Rock, and they're still using him well. It's one of the things that bugs the shit out of me when they make either spin-offs or they make sequels that seem to be against the character. They've got Hobbs and Shaw being like, I'll work alone. When we met him, he had a fucking team. He had a team, and he keeps going by, I need a team. Let's bring in Dom's team to do this. That's how the other movies bring in Hobbs. So it's like, fuck this with the I work alone bullshit. So that's where I had to bring in Fast Five. Y'all can call me on my shenanigans, but that shit is fun. And sometimes that's what I want out of a car chase.
Nothing wrong with that.
What is your final film, sir?
There's only one. It's Ronin. It is the best car chase there is. You talk about, and then once again, it swerves from Casino or Quantum of Solace, where you have a dude who was very cool, calm, collected, and in control of his environment. And Bourne is also that as well, Bond a little bit more. But you can see, first of all, this is one that just completely comes out of nowhere. And it's not like comes out of nowhere like Quantum of Solace just starts out of nowhere. But this is one that's, like I said earlier, tacked on to some other shit happening. Like some shit goes down, they just hop in their cars and go. And you can see the stress and the tension on their faces. Especially like Robert De Niro's face is just scrunched back into his head the entire time because, one wrong move and innocents are dead. They're dead. The cars are flipping over. The MacGuffin is lost. There's all sorts of shit happening. And it's also, the something that you don't get enough of. You have a woman who's in the other car doing the driving as well. The Irish woman whose name escapes me right now, but she's the one that's getting away, that they're trying to get after a botched deal goes down. You got Jonathan Pryce in the back seat. You got Jean Reno with her up in the passenger side. I'm sorry, Jean Reno's with Robert De Niro.
Natasha McElhone?
Yes.
I think I'm butchering her name, and I apologize for that.
Well, she'll email me later and tell me what the what the actual pronunciation
as
is.
They do, I guess.
All sorts of emails from people from Hollywood to listen to cinema. It's great in the sense that there's almost no score. It's just like a 7-10 minute long sequence with no score until the very end. But due to circumstances in the movie, it goes from person A being chased by person B to somehow person B gets ahead and like the chase flips. So the person who was getting away is now chasing the person who was being the chaser. So it was interesting to see in that regard a complete shift in the whole thing as well. And just the sound mix and sound engineering in that sequence is delicious because those engines are running at their peak optimal performance, and it is just overwhelming with just the screeching tires and engines and people screaming as they're getting out of the way. And it's not like even the antagonists in this film are just a bunch of, mindless bad guys. They don't want to kill innocents either. So when they are up on sidewalks or driving against traffic, which traffic in these car chase sequences is always just happens to be so neatly placed for everybody to weave in and out of. But they're honking.
Like the parking spot that's always open right in front of wherever you're going.
Yeah, it's they're honking horns, they're flashing lights, they're trying to tell people get out of the way. We don't want to hurt anybody. That's all interesting to see come together. And I don't think enough people talk about Ronin as one of my favorite Rob De Niro films, but B, specifically this car chase sequence, I do believe is one of the best car chase sequences in film.
When we were talking about this topic, I confided in you confidentially that I've never seen Ronin. So I want to say publicly, I have literally just added it to my Netflix queue, and I have moved it up to the number 2 spot. Number 1 spot is reserved for Connor right now. Don't hate me. He loves Sonic the Hedgehog. That's his new thing.
So nothing wrong with that.
Movie up to number 1.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, you might as well just keep it at number 2 because that'll be your next challenge.
Okay.
There you
Fine.
go. Yeah,
fine if we're doing that.
Hey, go ahead and knock it off the list so you can put something else at number 2. I'm trying to help your list. Help me help you.
Aww.
And I feel like Ronin isn't that long a movie, so you should be good to go get that bad boy knocked out.
Not a problem. That is not an issue since we've started his new sleep routine. But then fine. If we're doing that, then I'm going to make it weird too. You have to watch Promare.
All right, then. That works.
Sweet. Yay. Because I'm all about that movie. That I rewatched that movie recently, and I can't get enough of it. It is strangely just so good and so bizarre and perfect.
Oh.
And it's not perfect, and that's part of what makes it perfect.
Okay.
Well, it's one of those things. If you've watched some anime and you enjoy anime, then you're like, I'm all in on this shit, and it sort of makes no sense, but it does make sense because it doesn't make sense. Anyway, you'll see it. My number 1 is a storm of perfection. It is casting, perfect. Sound mixing, perfect. Narrative, perfect. Costuming, special effects, choreography, perfect. It is entirely a chase sequence, a car chase sequence for almost its entire 2-hour runtime. It is a feast for the eyes. It's so fucking good and so layered. It is Mad Max Fury Road.
I thought about that and I was like, I'm going to pass on that. But yeah, I'm definitely not going to argue with you.
It is hard to argue with it being a chase film with a car chase. It is almost entirely a car chase.
Yeah.
From From the minute Furiosa is found out that she's carrying precious cargo and that she is deviating from the mission, from that moment forward, it is a goddamn car chase. And I do have to agree that it is not so much a Mad Max film as it is a Furiosa film. But that's kind of what makes it work, is that it is set within this world that Max inhabits, but he is so lost to his demons that he can only go for the ride at this point.
Yeah. And the moment she's found out, you know who I feel sorry for in that scene? Immortan Joe's dude who's just kind of hanging on the side. He's just like, what the fuck's going on? What are we doing here? I thought we were doing this. And then he dies shortly thereafter, and the man just dies confused, not having any idea wait, we deemed off. There's one way I don't want to die is confused.
Although, to be fair, he is part of the problem because he's okay with the women being property.
Yeah.
He doesn't know differently because he's a war boy, and he doesn't have that long to live anyway.
That's
but
right.
also he had nobody to witness him, so he not only died confused, but he's not going to Valhalla, so he's got more problems to worry about right now.
You hate to see it.
You really do, but at the same time, fuck you, buddy. Part of the problem.
Part of the problem.
And that film gets so many things right in terms of, and being a good ally is paying attention and listening. And to hear the community talk about how Furiosa takes off her appliance, doesn't wear it constantly. She needs a break from it. It speaks to the experience of someone that uses those kinds of applications and tools, and how you do need breaks. You do need to remove things and clean yourself up and
let it breathe.
Let it breathe. Absolutely. So seeing that form of representation, seeing the journey of Furiosa, who maybe, as has come up in interviews, took the women solely because they were property of Joe's, and that she wanted to hurt Joe, only to realize that there was more value in who they were as individuals. Mm-hmm. And to see how they use in the chase sequence of trying to get Splendid. God, that it is so beautifully shot. And you're not sure about who's going to get hurt because Joe is going to take a shot on Furiosa for betraying him, but Splendid gets in the way, but she's pregnant and you can't hurt her. But oh wait, something is coming up, and Moten's like, no, the thing. Mm-hmm. And you're like, shit, she's going to die. But then she's saved, but then she falls, and and that's just one of several horrific moments that happens in this chase that constantly is finding ways to up the ante, to bring about tension that carries the narrative forward. There's highs, there's lows, and personally, it just doesn't get any better.
Agreed.
But I haven't seen Ronin, and I will.
Yeah. Yeah. That is pretty much one. And it's not one long chase sequence in the same way that Death Proof is one long chase sequence for the most part. Death Proof got incredibly boring to me about halfway through, whereas this takes those moments to stop, breathe, give character beats. All right, this plan didn't work. We got to reevaluate. We got to do this. We got to do that. All right, stop, back to the action, where I didn't get that in Death Proof at all.
Once they go for the test drive in the car, it
does
get a little exhausting.
Yeah, it's pretty much on from there. It doesn't get those small moments to let the audience breathe as well either and recollect themselves. Good list, sir. Good list.
Oh, why? Thank you. And I think your list was good too. I can't say how good because I need to see Ronin.
Yeah. Go ahead and get that in your eyeballs. And speaking of which, man, let's talk about these challenges.
Fuck you and your challenges.
I love it.
For those of you wondering why I'm suddenly about to murder Daryl, it's because he challenged me to watch a film that I'd heard about but was not prepared for. I made the mistake of watching this film between Judy and Punch, a female revenge story, mm-hmm. and Shirley, a film that is incredibly caustic, no matter how wonderful it is. He challenged me to the 2017 Brian Taylor horror dark comedy Mom and Dad.
Oh, I just gave you a little fun romp in between those two joints.
Fun bullshit. Bullshit. I was so on edge the entire time. It's not because the film is gory. It does have violence. I don't think it rubs in the gore. It takes delight in it, as it were, as some films might. For those of you that aren't familiar, this is a film led by Nicolas Cage and Selma Blair, a film where Crystal, while watching it with me, goes, "Oh, yeah, I see why this is a Nick Cage movie." Personally, I watched and went, no wonder he was cast in Color Out of Space. This was his audition tape for that. But it is a film in which an unexplained thing happens. It is suggested that it is a signal sent through television and radio, basically broadcasted, but a signal, a cellular virus, if you will, that changes something in the brain chemistry of parents, where the instinct to protect children is reversed. And they immediately try to kill their offspring. So if a child goes to a different parent, that parent has no issue. Bokeem Woodbine has a hilarious little cameo where he is talking about how, man, what is happening is horrible. Yeah, but you just killed your kid. Yeah? Do you feel bad about it? No.
I don't know what's been happening, but over the last week and a half, I've seen Bokeem Woodbine in everything that I've been watching. He's just been popping up in bit parts.
He's really good.
A TV show that I was watching, I was like, this motherfucker Bokeem Woodbine. With that most distinctive, gravelly-ass voice. Yeah. Oh, I love it. We need more Bokeem Woodbine.
He was great in Queen and Slim.
Great,
heartbreaking, but he was great in Queen and Slim.
Plays a great dick. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that's all he's ever played.
It might be because of that great gravelly voice.
Yeah,
the poor guy. But it's a hard movie to watch. My 5-year-old sleeping upstairs and just everything that's going on, and we're just killing kids. There, Selma Blair's character, the mom that the title references, her sister's getting ready to give birth, and you're watching the birth happen, and then you see when the new mom is holding her baby and just squeezing it. I had to look away. Crystal was like, just don't watch for a while, as the baby is kicked, newborn child is kicked around the hospital room. It is devastating. It was a hard watch. It is fucked up.
Yeah, it is.
If you're in the middle for something, well, just incredibly screwed up, watch it. Watch it. It's on Hulu. Go for it.
I had a blast watching this movie.
I did not. I had a lot of issues. It made me profoundly uncomfortable. It's not that the movie is bad either. It's very well done. Mm-hmm. It's just so well done, it can go get fucked. That is how I feel.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I
don't ever want to watch this again.
All right, then I'm going to wait like when Cinnamon is on like its 300th episode. And I'm going to see if I can sneak it in again on you.
No.
Is it no?
No, never going to happen.
Never going to happen.
It has been ingrained in my brain now. I will not forget.
No, it's like Requiem for a Dream.
I could handle watching that again before I could handle watching Mom and Dad.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting take. All right. And you gave me The Vast of Night.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I am curious as to...
Now streaming on Amazon Prime, by the way.
Now streaming on Amazon Prime, directed by Andrew Patterson, also written by him, I do believe. Nope. He produced it, but he didn't write it. I am curious as to why everyone seems to love this film but me.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
I looked at Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Deadline, IndieWire. They're all like, this film is great! And I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah.
People that I trust on Twitter like, we love this film! And I'm like, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't... If you're going to start me off with a 20-minute talkie, make it interesting, please. Like, I got bored with all of the talking. Like, this is development and all this kind of good stuff. It's getting you comfortable with the two people who will be your protagonists in this film, Sierra McCormick and Jake Horowitz. But after a while, I was just like, okay, this is only an hour and a half, and you spent a quarter of your film just talking. I need something to happen, something to kick off. Let's get this plot moving forward now. For me, roundabout where it starts wrapping up in this movie, Couch in this movie is a better movie, I think. Right as this thing is ending, I'm like, this is where the second act should be taken off. I have other ideas of what could happen there, but that's shouldn't be part of a review of a film. I just it was interesting enough to keep me watching. Things definitely got better when what is it? Billy called in.
Yes.
When that Billy called in, that's the better movie inside of this movie. That's one I want to know more of. And that's when I was like, okay, finally at the 45-minute mark, things are starting to get interesting. I wanted to try to go back and check it out again before we did this. I was going to while I was at work yesterday, but due to recent events, work has been absolute insanity. So didn't get a chance to. I do plan on rewatching this again soon, just to see if maybe this is something that I'm missing. That everyone else seems to love this movie as much as they do, and I give it like a solid C plus.
Yeah, when I rated it, I gave it a 3.5, and for me, it's because of the technical aspects of it that I enjoyed it. I agree with you with the storytelling. This is a film, for those of you not aware of The Vast of Night, it's a film in which a radio DJ and a switchboard operator get involved in trying to solve a mystery of weird sounds coming through the broadcast, as well as, and coming to the switchboard, as well as people reporting seeing something in the sky. So they're trying to find out what's going on while everybody else is at this basketball game, which is, I think, what you were talking about, the first 20 minutes sort of set up.
Mm-hmm.
The film itself is set within a framing device of, it's an episode of Paradox Theater, which is essentially the Twilight Zone.
Yeah. Interesting to frame it within something else when the framing has no real application on the film. Like, I guess they go maybe a little bit more absurd than they could have, because you're being understood to be watching a television show and this isn't quote unquote supposed to be happening in the real world. So that gives them a little bit of leeway there to go as off the rails as they want.
And that's what I was thinking as well, because the whole film, when you watch it, go into it thinking of it as a podcast that you are watching take place. I've only watched a few episodes of listened to a few episodes of Welcome to Night Vale, which is very similar in regard. There's a town where strange things are happening and people are reporting on it. And that's what happens here. In that sequence with Billy, which is really wonderful, there's a technical device where the editing is changed so that instead of just watching Horowitz talking on the phone to Billy, the screen cuts to black. It fades out and then it comes back in and then fades out again. I found that really sort of confusing and strange. The idea was to get you focusing on the voices and focused on the story. That was already working.
Yeah.
That was already working as a long take. And I think the idea of it was to combine various forms of media, podcasting, radio, television, and then film, all into one. And that, I think, is where it doesn't really work. That I think without that framing device, just tell us the story as an episode, if you will, does work on its own. And I loved the performances. The performances were great. And I had no problem with it asking questions that it doesn't ever really answer. But yeah, I didn't love it like some other people did that loved some stuff from that nuclear age of cinema. And it was fine. I would recommend it in here's this sort of interesting thing that's worth seeing just to see it. because of these technical things that the director does, that one shot he does showing you the whole town was really impressive. To see how it was done and to find out how it was shot was also interesting, using bungee cords, and there were handoffs. People were running while also using a scooter and some other stuff. That's really interesting. But while it was neat to see the geography of the town, that should have happened earlier in the film. It served no purpose when it happened.
Yeah, that was I went looking into this, and everyone's raving about this wonder, and I'm like,
but why are we getting it
right
now?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking while I was watching. Like, this seems oddly placed, and this is Andrew Patterson's first film, so there's a lot of first film looking things or decisions made, I guess you can say. Somebody, I can't remember if it was thinking of Deadline or Variety, is like, this is a young Chris Nolan, and I just closed the tab out. I was like, no, I'm not reading the rest of this review.
Chris Nolan is not above criticism.
Chris Nolan is not above criticism. This comparison, I thought, this comparison definitely deserves criticism. But yeah, I'll go back and give it another run through just to see if I enjoyed it any more the second time.
Yeah, I think with expectation shifted, I might enjoy it more. But I can't imagine enjoying it less.
Right.
And that's at least good, that I can go, oh, well, that's neat, and that's neat, and that's neat. Nah. It's fine.
Yeah,
it's fine.
It's fine.
It's a film to see. If you're looking for something to watch, it's a little different.
Yeah, a fairly short runtime too. So, get in, get out, watch something.
Yeah. And that covers it for this week's episode. And we have the challenges set. I will watch Ronin. You will watch Promare.
Alrighty then.
We'll figure out a way to make it a little easier, because right now Promare is only available. I think you can rent it, but it's only available through.
It's not on Vudu?
It came out on Blu-ray DVD, and I'd hate for you to spend like $20 to rent it.
So that ain't happened.
If we can figure something out.
Is it not on Vudu?
It might. I don't know. I don't use Vudu to rent and watch things. That's where I house some of my digital stuff. But I know you can rent it.
Yeah, pretty much everything we do for Refried Scenes, I just rent through Vudu.
Oh, dang. Promare might be available to rent for $2 on Amazon Prime.
All right, then. Well, boom. There we go. We'll figure that out later.
HD $4.99. But even still, maybe we can figure something out. I've got it. We just need to figure out a way to get it to you.
Yeah. All right, then. Cool. Well, that's it for this episode of The Cinnamon, episode 32 in the books. We will be back in a couple of weeks for episode 33. Until then, you guys take it easy and stay safe out there. Stay the buck home if you can.
And if you have to leave the house, not only be safe for health reasons, but be safe out there with whatever it is you're endeavoring to do.
Yes. All right, then. Take it easy, and we'll see you hopefully in a couple of weeks.